afternoon as we continue our discussion here all day today on Power 102 FM, looking at the economy from the point of view of the statements made by the Minister of Finance in his midterm review of the 2019 budget. You just heard some of what he said in that clip there. People are spending money in the country. Credit has gone up by $7 billion or $7 million in the last 3 years. He says things are looking up. Also, we will share with you something that the minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and now Acting Minister of National Security and Minister of Communications, Fitzgerald Hines, in the discussion we had around this table. In the wake of that, he gave an example of how the government sees things are beginning to blossom again. So we continue the discussion now. In studio with us, Mr. David Muhammed from the Black Agenda Project, as well as Pastor Winston Mansing of the Faith-Based Network. In an office in Couva, we have Mr. Ramchand Rajbal, President of the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Jai Leela working with the chambers in that part of the country as well as in the East-West Corridor to some extent. And in Tobago, Ms. Latoya Roberts from the Tobago Youth Council. Good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for being with us. Let me start with Ms. Roberts. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right, thanks for agreeing to join this discussion. What is your sense about what we are talking about here? The evidence that there is to support the assertions being made by the Minister of Finance and other people in the government, and we have turned a corner and things are looking good.
Well, I am happy to hear that the government finally giving publicly acknowledge that there is a scenario economy. So at least publicly they are saying that. In terms of the evidence, for me I've seen good, but this growth wouldn't come very quickly. And in the Tobago landscape, I'm seeing certain development in certain areas. So the Tobago House of Assembly has been doing a lot of infrastructure as it relates to road repairs and bridges. But the tourism industry, in my opinion, on the island is still stagnant. So I haven't seen growth there. And if the economy is dependent on that industry, I expected to see quick growth there. In terms of the private sector, I can't say I've seen significant growth because on the island, a lot of businesses are closing down. They are moving their locations to other affordable rental spaces because they're not turning over the money as quickly as they want to. So growth may be in figures, but I can't admit to say that it is trickling down to the average man as yet.
Yeah, and to the extent that you can, to the extent that you are familiar with what people are actually saying and doing, what are some of the things that you hear people, what is the mood that you can gauge based on what people are saying, those people with whom you interact?
Well, for the young people specifically, young entrepreneurs on the island, I think people are in survival mode still. I don't see persons having really high turnover and a lot of disposable income to purchase things that they would have been purchasing in the past. So I would say that people are still trying to stay above water. And there are some sectors where persons still have not made it across yet. They're not even treading above waters yet.
All right, stay with us. Let me bring you in, Messrs. Rajbal and Leela Singh in Couva. Take it up from there. Mr. Rajbal, you were reported in the paper, I think the day after the minister's review, and you said that the evidence is not there just yet. You are still dealing with the fact that people have lost jobs. People are not spending as they are expected to do. You don't see any buoyancy.
Right. Good afternoon to you, Andy. Andy, the situation remains the same. There has no clear indicators to say otherwise. I would love to say yes, I do agree with the minister, but there are no indicators to verify that sort of behavioral attitude with respect to the business sector. People are still, especially small and medium-sized business, we have continuously seen closure of business. We have seen, and because of the closure of business, it creates unemployment as well. So that's the reason I really can't see how there has been a turnaround or is about turnaround taking place. Indicators have not revealed such.
Yeah. So you're saying that we are still living in the shadow of business failures, of people unemployed?
a number of people. Every day, and the people have been coming and calling the chamber for employment of all different media, willing to do anything. And the jobs are not available. Jobs are not available. I can also verify there are a couple of business people who want to sell their equipment and machinery, and they cannot sell it because there's no one to buy to go into business. So people are stuck. You know, the construction industry is at standstill. You know, there's not much infrastructural development taking place, whether it's central government or private sector.
Yeah, Mr. Little, last thing, let me just bring you into the discussion. You sort of, my sense is that you coordinate among various groups of the smaller chambers. What is your sense, based on what people are saying to you in your circles?
Okay, Andy, let me answer the question as this. SMEs right now are fraught with low sales, profitability, and the whole issue of the high cost of doing business, owing to taxation and other costs that go with it. But what is also happening to SMEs is that a lot of them are doing business with government by way of supplying goods and services. And some of them have not been paid for 1 year. And they are constantly renegotiating with their suppliers for better credit terms, or keeping deferring payments, or going to the banks asking for extension on their overdrafts or increases in their overdrafts. Some of them putting up their own residential homes as collateral in order to pay the suppliers and still awaiting government payments to them. Then there's the whole issue of low consumer confidence. Now again, I am being very cautious with my remarks, but the issue is that a lot of goods and services have gone up in terms of pricing. The reason why there is a low inflation rate, though, is because there is a less and less economic activity. So people are just in survival mode at this point in time. And consumers are, yes, buying less, more judicious, and very conservative with what they get, simply because of how the bill has increased dramatically at the grocery stores and other drugstores and so forth. So what we are experiencing is not translated into better value. But what we're experiencing really is growth on the books. So yes, there is growth because of the natural gas production, but again, Andy, it is not sustainable. What we need really is that we need to have a sustainable economic strategy. And again, I want to start by saying I want to compliment Power 102 for at least having the national conversations regarding the economy, but we need something much more engaging, especially when the state is there, to hear from people involved in business, whether it is SMEs to large enterprises, to understand what is the strategy we need to move forward to help the private sector and also restructure, reorganize, and recalibrate the economy so that we can develop in a better, more sustainable manner. The minister said people are spending, but this would be coming from their savings and the reserves that they put down. It is not a question of turnaround. And then savings, using their savings again is not sustainable because eventually it is depleted. So that is the issue. 1, less consumer confidence. 2, low sales and profitability. 3, continuous credit from the banks because they need to have their overdrafts running to operate their business, not being paid by the state going to the supply of goods and services. And Andy, you cannot tell the state you're not doing business with them. I mean, the state is a big sector, but I mean, somewhere or the other, they have to pay off their suppliers as much as they can so that these people can start the circular flow of money once again, pay off their suppliers, start having stuff on their shelves, and keep their employees. When these SMEs...
All right, let me ask you this only point there, because stay with us. We'll come back to you, Ms. Robertson Tobago. Let's come indoors a little bit so that, gentlemen, you've been hearing some of those discussions past the man saying, David Muhammed. You want to go first, David Muhammed? What's your...
Yeah.
Did you have an overall sort of opening statement before you respond to some of what you've been hearing?
Yeah, well, generally, first of all, the statement about the economy turning around has been somewhat immortalized in the same way that the statement about raising gas once, twice, and 3 times and the people haven't rioted as yet has stuck with the population. This one seems to be just as contentious, but in a more covert way. If you were to ask me if I think the economy has turned around, I would say yes. but yes, for whom? And I think that the Minister of Finance gave away the true intent behind him saying that with one simple, I will refer to it as a slip of the tongue, when he said the economy has turned around and, quote, I am sure that the World Bank would agree. Now, if the World Bank agrees that our economy has turned around, then that spells trouble for us, the people. Because institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank have characterized their interaction with third world countries in particular through three things. One, conditionalities. Two, structural adjustment programs. Three, austerity measures. All of which have an aggressive attitude towards the perpetuation of social programs, free education, free transportation, welfare, etc. They first compel third world governments to restrict the free access or anything that resembles socialism within capitalism. They mandate that governments desist from that kind of generosity. And so if the World Bank is going to agree with that, then that means that for the masses of the people on the ground level, the poverty will increase and spread. So on paper, in theory, in the reports and for the statistics and data, yes, the economy would look fantastic on paper. But the reality on the grassroots level among the people is that it seems like times are harder. There's high unemployment, low minimum wage. So many people that you meet on the street lamenting over the fact that they sometimes have to decide between sending their children to school or buying food. And that seems to be spreading more and more. Now, I don't believe that the Minister of Finance is in touch with the people, but being in touch with the people should be a major criteria for having a legitimate evaluation on the economy. And if you can literally exclude yourself from the general public and make these assessments and evaluations about the economics of the country without even knowing what the average ordinary voter is going through, well, then those statements about the economy turning around, as far as I'm concerned, are illegitimate.
All right, Pastor Mansing.
Good afternoon, Andy, and good afternoon to the panel and our radio listeners. I want to pick up from Mr. Muhammed, and there is definitely a disconnect from the Minister of Finance's statement and his view and that of the general public. While when you look at the macroeconomic plan, and there are some of us who may not be able to speak to that, but when you speak to certain technocrats and so on, they may see that there are some macroeconomics that are working in the background that would suggest some things may come 12 months, 10 months, 14 months down the road. There is no real lightening of the load to the general public at this present time. So if he were to say that there could be a turning around, or there might be a turning around, but it has not turned. So when you look at the faith perspective and the faith-based network and our dealings with society, you would find that many people, we are the first respondents or the first doors to those who are in need and those who are going through difficulties. And I can say to you that there are thousands of people, really large groups of people who are going through difficulties, who are struggling to meet. However, within the faith community, there is that operative word faith that continues to give hope. But genuinely and realistically, we are not seeing what the minister is saying on the grassroots, and the people at that level are feeling the pinch. We are hopeful, however, that the economy will improve and our nation as a whole will improve as we all continue to work together.
Yeah. So you're getting that, that sense.
No, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I would like to say that respectfully, and I speak from a personal perspective of having hope, but the general citizens, the citizens of our nation, the confidence is low, the morale is low, and when you look at the other indicators and factors, the crime and the depression, the stress that is taking its toll on marriages and families and so on. And when you look at, I would have spoken to a number of religious leaders in various communities across sections of the nation to get the feel in their areas in my preparation to be here today. So different communities are feeling it in different ways. There are some communities that things have stabilized, but there are other communities deep south, close to the Marabella, Gasparillo, Williamsville area, and south on a whole, it's taking a tougher beating than some other places, central, and so there are some places that are saying things have stabilized, and there are a couple areas that are saying, even I spoke to religious leaders in Tobago just to get a feel, and I want to concur with the sentiments of our speaker from Tobago as well. Yeah, based on what she's saying and what they're saying, there is a balance, there is an agreement of those thoughts. So this is our perspective from the faith community. I think the government of the day, and as we prepare to move forward, needs to be able to stimulate the economy in a more meaningful way outside of the gas and the petrochemical industry, and even for want of not, I don't want to be political at all. That's not my desire. But I think even coming into power in 2015, that whole negativity that was brought, that things are bad, and it just totally undermined. It was like a landslide that took away the confidence of the average citizen, and we need the average citizen to be spending and also saving.
Affected people's attitudes.
That's right, obviously. And one of the things I can say to the listeners and to the panel, and maybe the chairman of the business sector and so on that we have on the phone can say whether this is so or not, but there are many small business owners who are preparing to migrate for sake of the unstable environment and also the crime.
Right. And Mr. Niladasim referred to what is called, and some of the people who spoke this morning earlier, to the question, the equation about consumer confidence. You mentioned it a while ago. So we want to go back. We'll bring you back in, gentlemen. But let's go back to Latoya Robertson today. But before we do that, let me just get you to respond to. This is one of the things the Minister of Finance said whilst he presented that midterm review of the budget a couple of weeks ago.
It should be noted that after that IMF projection was published in the World Economic Outlook in April 2019, the IMF confirmed in a live press conference that the Trinidad and Tobago economy started to improve in 2017 and returned to positive growth in 2018. The IMF further confirmed that it will update its April 2019 projection for our economy in June or July of 2019. In contrast, the World Bank has projected real growth of positive 0.9% for the Trinidad. In the circumstances, there is no need to put measures in place to mitigate anything. According to all official estimates, both local and international, our economy is on a positive growth path.
All right, so that was the Minister of Finance as he laid out the midterm budget review a couple of weeks ago. Let's come back to you in Tobago, Latoya Roberts. One of the things you said, you talked about you're not getting the sense about buoyancy in tourism, which is Tobago's sort of biggest industry. What do you respond to what you just heard there?
I think what the minister is really alluding to, like, we first need to account for how much of Tobago's economic activity really channels into the national budget and programming. As it stands now, the island mostly are the persons are employed through the THA, which is really service sector and government-based services, and most of the THA services, to extent, do not funnel into the tourism industry. Talking to many of the tourism stakeholders and seeing evidence on the island, we do not have enough tourists walking around the island daily to say that there's a significant contribution in the tourism industry. Additionally, because of the competition within the region, it is very difficult for wire tourists or public tourists come to Tobago as opposed to the other sectors when we do not have what the tourists want at this point in time. The product level is still low. Yes, there have been efforts to develop certain little things in terms of the product, like I've seen moves made to improve Pigeon Point Heritage Park. They've been talking about launching other projects on the island to help develop the product. But unless there is a big investment to really review and rebrand the product, I am seeing no improvements there at this time. So yes, on paper there is growth. I will not say there is no growth in the economy, but in the Tobago's perspective, how much percentage of the tourism industry contributed to that growth? It will probably be negligible or none at all.
Yeah, and as best you can, respond to your assess the mood of the people. What are people saying? Your friends, your associates. What are their perspectives? When you talk to people, you get a sense of confidence. You get a sense of buoyancy in the spirit and the mood. You speak for the young people in Tobago in particular.
Well, I think generally most of the young people on the island, they are stable because Tobago community always tend to be very family oriented. So there's always that social covering, I guess, where even if your child isn't working, they're 18, where they should be working, they aren't working. The THA provides a set of social sector programs that they could become involved in. So you'll have maybe like the YES program or the Division of Sport and Youth Affairs will provide those programs, which supposed to be capacity building and training. So a lot of the young persons on the island, I would say, have the capacity building, they have the training, but there's still limited economic activity being generated. Our government has spent a lot of money on educating the young people in the country, and I'm very glad and grateful for that, but we have not yet really seen the returns on investment from that education given to our young persons that now translates into generating economic activity. Yes, there's the encouragement of encouraging young persons to go into business, but on the island with only about 60,000 of us, it's really saturated. There's only really so much industries where a young person could probably thrive in. And then the startup capital to probably innovate and bring an out-of-the-box idea to the island will pose a challenge. And then whether we like it or not, the Tobago business owners still have the challenge of the ANC bridge that has not been totally rectified to really suit the needs and demands of really building an economy on the island or at a fast pace that we may like. So people also have those additional challenges that they have to face daily.
So that is a challenge that has not been surmounted yet. The question of moving from one island to the next, inter-island transport.
It's seasonal. It's seasonal. We look forward to the July-August coming soon, so the wars will start again.
The wars, you say?
Yeah. I will deem it as wars because at the end of the day, I believe we're living in a twin island state, and once the government decide to make an effort to put that infrastructure in, it should be maintained. And I think that is a challenge. It's okay to say we have an ANC bridge and then there's no proper maintenance factor being there. Well, hopefully we get another new boat coming soon. We'll see when that reaches. But if the maintenance isn't there, then the ANC bridge will not function as well as it should. And we all know when is the peak period within the islands now, so I think there should have been a system in place quickly to assess and move on, see what works, what is not working, and move on fast. And I think we really took a long time to get that right.
And you're not sure that it is going to be proven to be right when the high season comes again. So there's no sense of confidence that it will be any better.
Yeah, I don't see that as yet.
Yeah, a lot of people speak negatively about the fact that majority of jobs in Tobago come through the aegis of the Tobago House of Assembly. Some people see that as a bad thing. What's your view on that? What's the people on the ground sentiment about that? They say
I don't see that as a bad thing. I think what is the challenge for the Tobago House of Assembly is probably the business model, because even if a lot of the jobs come through the Tobago House of Assembly, once those jobs are actually probably spilled off into things like factories and manufacturing and a larger agricultural sector, it's okay. But currently the model is that a majority of persons employed through the THA are mostly servicing industry, and I think that is where you get stifled. But once the THA decides to probably do a large-scale agricultural practice, or probably further develop Couva into more manufacturing sectors and really push for export through maybe state companies, etc., then that model could work just as fine as in any other country. But I think the current problem right now we're having is that a lot of these persons employed in THA are strictly services industry, and those services are not exported. It's just day-to-day administrative services industry that could be handled on the island.
Yeah. So there's much more to come to convince you and to convince the people you deal with that we've turned the corner and things are looking up, rather than being on a level where there's
yes, definitely.
Yeah. All right, Ms. Roberts, thank you very much for talking with us on this issue. All right, that's Latoya. That was Latoya Roberts, president of the Tobago Youth Council. Well, gentlemen, in Couva, let me come back to you. Let's just introduce this with This is the other statement from the Minister of Finance, as we've been using in the promo for this program here, talking about how much money he sees being spent in the economy.
The net credit to the private sector by banks and lending institutions, a well-established indicator of private sector investment and consumer confidence, has grown from 51 billion in December 2015 to 58 billion in December 2018, an increase of 7 billion or 14% over the period. People are investing and they're spending money in this country. Credit has increased by $7 billion over the last 3 years. If we look at prices year on year, retail prices have increased by only 0.8% between March 2018 and March 2019, while food inflation has been contained at just 2% year on year, Madam Speaker. These are some of the lowest inflation rates for Trinidad and Tobago for decades.
All right, Jai Lilladar Singh, Ramchand Rajbal, your responses.
Yes, Adi.
Yes.
And we continue to believe that really we would gladly want to see the economy turning around. Again, as Mr. Roberts and Tobago have indicated and other speakers, we have yet to see that. The business from all indication from our membership, this is not so. We would really like to see the turnaround is taking place, and we hope that in the not too distant future we will see some effects of that. Indeed, many firms are not investing locally, and their confidence in the economy being shattered. Several are engaged in capital flight, where they have set up operations in other parts of the Caribbean region. Some are opted to go to Guyana, right, and invested in assets and financial instruments, such as the United States, where they can earn better returns than what it is available locally. I just want to say that people were very hopeful that they would have seen some injection with the Dragon gas, Dragon field coming into being, and now that is not looking as hopeful as before, and even with the Sandals going through that project, you know, one to believe what is next. Where are we going to see some glory of movement taking place in the economy? We are yet to see that.
All right, let me bring you in here, David Muhammed. Before I come back to you, Mr. Lilladar Singh, now in Couva. So, take off on what you just said there.
Well, that clip, and also going back to the earlier one that was played there, it substantiates my point about, because he brought in the IMF in addition to the World Bank, and is talking about how theoretical the boost in the economy is, but not practical. But having said that, though, it has always been like that under our system. There are very few moments, in fact the moments that there were, where there was some kind of economic comfort on the ground level, are literally historic and can be pointed out, identified, few and far in between points when public servants would have gotten some back pay, or back in 1999 when teachers would have gotten an increase in salaries, or back in 1996 when there was that ever so memorable budget that Brian Quaitung read, where for the first time people actually understood something, which was the price of cheese is going down, the price of sardines is going down, the price of bread is going down. That was probably the only comprehensive budget, period, for many people. So am I supposed to, as a resident in an impoverished community, say, okay, well, there's no food in the cupboard, no money to send the children to school, but no, it's okay, because the Minister of Finance said, he said that the IMF and the World Bank said everything's okay on paper. So maybe what I'm seeing in the cupboard is an illusion, and maybe when I look in my pocket and I see nothing in my wallet, maybe that's an illusion as well. So it's like you're telling someone that what they're seeing is not real, but the reality is what I'm saying. But in saying that, too, going back to the point about it has always been like this, just the very nature of our economy from a sociological point of view, not economics, we have what is called a surplus economy as opposed to a social economy. In a social economy, the state accumulates wealth and redistributes it accordingly based on the need of individual communities and citizens. So what is in the national treasury is supposed to be divided among the masses as a result of them having citizenship in a sovereign state, which gives them part ownership of the resources of that state. But instead of that kind of economy being in operation, we have the surplus economy, which is you can have poor people, you can have people who are impoverished, deprived, in absolute relative and subjective poverty, but there's wealth in the national treasury. But rather than extracting wealth from the national treasury and redistributing it accordingly to eradicate poverty, you take more wealth and add it to that already existing wealth while there are starving people. And then if more wealth is generated, again, instead of redistributing it among the masses of the people, you take that third amount of wealth and again, you add it onto already existing wealth. That is both in the private and the public sector. But in the public sector, that wealth added upon wealth added upon wealth is used as collateral to get even more wealth. So I just have to have money in storage, not to be spent, but to be used as some kind of credit facility so that I qualify to acquire even more. And then you see the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer as a result of that kind of system. But the poor are perpetually kept in a state of hope through an illusion, this illusion of inclusion, that things will change. Now, Trinidad and Tobago recently celebrated 55 years of independence, and we have had approximately 11 elections in that time. We should be maturing to the degree now that we've come to the realization that, wait a minute, things that are said prior to an election are not necessarily true. If you add in the local government elections in between those, you'll have at least some 25 or so general elections, of which there has been a consistent, unwavering pattern of intentions being stated to the public through a manifesto, through campaign platform promises that have not materialized. Therefore, some kind of alternative means of accessing our rights and privileges as citizens, human rights and civil rights, there has to be some other means of accessing that. And that is a puzzle that the masses have to figure out, that the politicians will keep as a secret.
All right, thank you very much, Pastor Mansi.
And continue to build. I like how the conversation is going, and I want to build again from what Mr. Muhammad said, and also to use this credibility. I want to use that word, credibility. You see, where there must be stability, there must be credibility first. And when persons, governments, ministers, prime ministers, whoever, continue to speak to our nation and to give information, but that information is flawed or is misrepresented or it is tainted in any way, it affects the people whether they believe it or not, or whether they feel, well, look, I just said something and that the people have accepted that, or the people could just take that and move on. So this credibility, and we have seen this happening over and over the years as a nation. Right? We've come to the country and said, oh, we have no money to run the country. The country only has money for 3 days. That was a misrepresentation of the facts. We continue to build. We have heard so many things that our politicians continue to speak out. Well, this one did that and that one did that, so therefore we have to do this. But there no credibility. We moved to a Petrotrin issue. We have so many statements being made on the Petrotrin issue as to why or why not. And again, it's credibility, and there is no open discussion that will allow for the layman, the average citizen, to really understand what is happening in the country. And so it continues to weaken again. Where I am building my argument on that word of confidence. Confidence and credibility. We want credible leadership. We want credible voices. We want credible actions so that it can boost the confidence of the nation. Now, Mr. Muhammad again alluded to that, and a gentleman who also picked up on the migration of persons with assets and stuff like that, and which is a reality that we have faced decade after decade in this country as we have gone through various economic cycles. When are we going to be creative, and when are we going to be innovative enough to be able to sustain and to hold our people here to develop our nations? Because Trinidadians are very creative people at the ground level. It just seems at the political and governance structure level we lose all credibility after being elected. So that is an area of concern. Governance, weak governance, is affecting the economic stability of the nation, and we can talk about all the other things, but if we don't talk about the governance structures that need to be strengthened and sustained, then our economies may or may not.
All right, we need to do a couple of things. We need to take a break, and when we come back, we want to open the lines, and we want to come back with you, Mr. Lila Darsing, so stay with us, stay there. We'll come back to you shortly. This is InFocus on this Wednesday, 29th of May, looking at the sense in the population as to whether there is a feeling among the people that there's a turnaround consistent with what the Minister of Finance and other people in the government have been saying, where we are at this point in 2019. We will share with you as well a statement from the Minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General, now Acting Minister of National Security and Communications, Fitzgerald Hines, on this very subject. So stay with us.
This is Power 102, empowering you.